My name is Paul Stratton, American CIA contract officer, son of a Brooklyn sonar tech who tuned destroyer ears for the Atlantic Fleet. On paper, I'm senior acoustic technician, second-class Makar Kirillovich, stationed aboard K-460 Vog, a Typhoon-class Soviet missile submarine prowling under the Arctic cap. Langley dropped me here to log patrol patterns, reactor harmonics, and crew procedures. Evidence that will let Washington track these leviathans from orbit once I'm out. Until extraction, I hide behind gauges and jargon, praying the men around me never learn why their newest crewmate speaks Russian like a Moscow announcer but dreams in English. The sonar pit is the only space that feels honest enough to breathe. Everywhere else, the red banners and factory-bright welds remind me that discovery ends with a bullet and a weighted sailcloth shroud. Down here, alone with phosphor screens, the one talent my cover can't fake keeps me alive, listening. Every compartment above carries the Zampolit's shadow. That's the crew's word for the political officer, the party's watchdog, assigned to every Soviet sub to sniff out doubt and enforce loyalty. He walks the passageways in a black leather coat, eyes always moving, listening for a wrong word or a hint of sabotage. On paper, his authority is equal to the captain's whenever questions of politics or internal security arise. Around him, jokes die in the throat. Men adjust their uniforms so the little red party pin on their collars shows clear under the lights. Today, the sea tells a lie. At 03:17 hours, a sweep of damp parchment brushes across Channel Bravo. Not ice, not cavitation from our own screws, not a NATO sub tailing us at 400 meters. It drags for 9 long seconds, a dragging scrape like something soft sliding over metal. Repeats once, then quits as if it never existed. I rewind the tape, notch the gain, play it again. Same cadence, same shift in pitch, like leather sliding over bone. I note the coordinates, stamp the log, and keep my face blank while suspicion coils. If I misclassify the contact, the Zampolit will cite sabotage. If I label it unknown, I invite questions from above my pay grade. Either flavor could end with a pistol behind my ear. So I write what any loyal senior acoustic technician would write. Contact likely glacial interface. Low threat. A safe lie, the kind a spy can live with. But the lie unravels before I lift my pen. Engineering to control. We're losing output again. Down 12% and falling. The intercom crackles through every deck. 12%. We've been bleeding power in single-digit bites for 3 days. Now the wound is arterial. Within a minute, the captain orders full stop and silent running. Within 2, he sends the Vog nudging upward toward open sky, if he can find a hole in the ice cap wide enough to breathe. Up is a direction no Soviet captain chooses lightly this far north. Satellites gorge on infrared the moment a reactor plume hits air. Captain Petrov knows that. So does the Zampolit. Yet turbines groan to half power and ballast tanks bleed, because a dead boat is worse than a spotted one. I secure my tapes, sign the duty slate, and head for the con. The corridor tilts, ballast shifting, and my boots grind frost off the deck plates. Compressed breath leaks from pipes in thin white ribbons. Every hiss reminds me that the shell keeping us alive measures 5 centimeters. Good American steel can stretch its luck. Soviet alloy tends to slit. Captain Petrov and political officer Karpov face each other at the chart table like rival bishops. Petrov's fingers drum the periscope collar. Karpov's leather coat squeaks when he folds his arms. "Surfacing risks interception," Karpov says. His voice carries the practiced calm of a man who knows Moscow signs his rations. "Staying down risks a blackout," Petrov replies. "Choose the bullet or choose the coffin." Neither glances at me. I keep to the rail, invisible, hearing everything. Petrov wins by inches. We surface under a midnight polinia no wider than a football field. The hull breaks milk-grey water, steam furls skyward, and the Arctic wind gnaws it clean. Stepashin, our best diver, stands ready in an exposure suit that looks too thin for God's forgiveness. His visor fogs as he leans close to Karpov. "If NATO eyes us," Karpov warns, "you will carry that shame back to Murmansk." "Better shame than ice filling my lungs," Stepashin answers. He seals his helmet, steps onto the deployment ladder, and drops into water the temperature of charcoal dust. His voice comes steady through the umbilical. "Descent clear. Visibility 2 meters. Hull skin shows thin film, dark, tacky. Something is growing here, comrade. It's spread over the plating, feels porous, brittle at the edges. I can't see hull numbers." Petrov frowns at the word growing. "Marine algae this far north? Impossible." My gut twists. The scrapings match this location. A metallic clack, Stepashin's scraper hitting steel, then his breath speeds. "Captain, it's drawing heat. I can hear it, like wind through reeds." Karpov blanches. I forget to hide my worry and lean toward the speaker. Static bursts. Stepashin's voice shreds into raw noise. Through the garble, we catch a phrase that does not fit any training manual. "We're part of it now." Something slams the hull. Not an impact, a suction, sudden and greedy, that rattles the bow planes. The comm line screams. Stepashin howls, the sound too human to doubt, then stops. The only noise left is the submarine's reactors grinding harder to maintain trim. Karpov reaches for the dive supervisor's handset, but Petrov seizes his wrist. The captain's eyes hold the calm of a man counting seconds to decide whether he still commands a crewman or a corpse. We pull Stepashin in. He thrashes like a netted carp, visor crazed with cracks, suit pocked by black burrs that smoke against the frigid air. Medics haul him below. His screams trail down the hatch and claw the air behind the closing hatch combing. I try to file the sound away for later analysis and fail. Some noises spike straight into memory. The Vog dives. Petrov refuses to linger under open sky. When the sail sinks, the surface seals above us, as if it was never broken. Starlight is gone in an instant, replaced by the red hush of combat illumination. We drift at 40 meters while engineering autopsies the numbers. Reactor output, down another 3% since the dive. Coolant temperature, falling. External hull temp, near ambient seawater. Inside control, breath clouds vanish before they rise. Heat siphoned away faster than we can make it. Chief Engineer Lebedev hands Petrov a clipboard. I peer over their shoulders, uninvited. "Look at the gradient," Lebedev mutters. "Something outside is drinking our heat." "An ice secretion?" Captain Petrov asks. "Then the metal would contract evenly. We'd see sensor variants in bow and stern alike. This is patch-specific, like a furnace on the wrong side of the wall." The revelation lands, and the room shrinks. Petrov turns towards me, the only acoustician on duty. "You heard scraping minutes before the drain spike." "Yes, Captain. Pattern repeated twice." "Could cavitation thaw a cavity that refroze around us?" "No, sir. Scraping lacked turbulence signature. Sounded semi-organic." Karpov's eyes sharpens. "Organic?" He makes the word an accusation. "Possibly," I correct. "Unknown at best." Petrov signals me closer. His voice drops. "If the organism masks our thermal bloom, can satellites still see us?" I hesitate. He notices. "Speak." "Infrared would read us colder than background, Captain. We'd be invisible." Silence holds for 3 breaths, long enough to taste the bargain forming in his mind. He turns to Lebedev. "Can life support maintain crew comfort if we run at -15 interior? Short-term with parkas and rationed hot water. Long-term frostbite and machinery fatigue. But we'd keep the NATO birds blind." Petrov's tone makes it clear he sees 2 predators here, and only one might eat us gently. Stepashin, what remains of him, lies in sickbay, muttering about black coral and eyes in the steel. We are still 28 days from scheduled resupply. No rescue will smash through 3 meters of pack ice to pull us out. Our options are detach from the growth we do not understand, or court its leverage against an enemy we know too well. I request permission to sample hull acoustics again. Petrov grants it. I return to my pit, strap on headphones, and pull gain past safe margins. The sea is quiet. Even our reactors transmit murmurs into salt water, but those murmurs now fade against a broader hush. It feels like diving ear first into fresh snow, every familiar resonance damped by a blanket not meant for ears. A mathematician once told me true silence is impossible. What we call silence is only noise beneath perception. Tonight I learn he was wrong. Silence can be manufactured. Someone or something has done the math. I let the fact settle. If the growth keeps satellites blind, Soviet command will order us deeper, not home. NATO will lose track, assume we slipped south, pivot their patrols, and free the Vog to roam where Moscow directs. An intelligence windfall, if the boat survives long enough for my superiors to exploit it. Yet every second the growth thickens, dragging us closer to mechanical failure and hypothermia. Tradecraft urges me to preserve the asset. Instinct says burn it before it learns to chew. I rub a thumb across the logbook's cracked leather, inherited from the analyst before me, shot for treason he never committed. The spine groans. I think of Stepashin's visor cracking the same way. A shudder ripples through the deck. Hydraulics strain as the Vog settles under a fresh weight. The growth is moving, redistributing itself like a python cinching around prey. Alarms stay silent only because the sensors reading hull stress have been robbed of warmth and, with it, life. I reach for the intercom, but Petrov's voice arrives first, calm, authoritative, final. All hands, maintain silent running. We sail under new concealment. He believes the ice above and the parasite outside give him a cloak. They might also be the grave clothes fitted in advance. My station clock flips to 4:12 a.m. I call out the time, then the heading. The Vog is descending on a northerly glide slope, deeper than anything marked on our patrol map. It's the organism choosing the direction now. Petrov just steers where it's allowed. We're passengers in our own ship. A subtle pressure tightens between my eyes, sinus warning of depth increase. I swallow against it and log the change. The pencil leaves a smear, lighter than it should be. Cold makes graphite behave strangely. For a moment I imagine the growth reading my scratches through the bulkhead, piecing together motives from vibration alone. Paranoia perhaps, but after Stepashin's broadcast, paranoia is just arithmetic. I close the log, shut down non-essential monitors, and lean back. Instrument lights dim of their own accord. Reactor throttling to the growth's appetite. In darkness, the Vog feels like a lung no longer sure which body it serves. Somewhere above, the Polinia has frozen over, sealing off the last thread of daylight. We drift beneath kilometers of ice, escorted by a silent companion that feeds on heat and friction. Stepashin's final words ricochet inside my skull. We're part of it now. The boat creaks, a drawn breath, not a complaint, and I know he was right. The Vog goes blind to the surface world goes blind to us. Between those equal darknesses, 160 men trade familiar dangers for one we cannot spell. I keep listening, because that is the one faith I have left. I wait for the next sound the ocean should not make. When it comes, I will be ready, or I will be first to know we're finished. The next sound arrives sooner than I expect. A metallic sigh lifts through the deck beneath my chair. I lean toward the scopes. No ice shear, no prop wash, just stressed steel complaining in a register sonar barely hears. Then the control circuit for compartment 7 snaps open on the comm. Torpedo room, bulkhead deforming. Looks like it's breathing in. Seaman Orloff's voice quivers, higher than regulation allows. Air hisses behind him, a spasmodic gasp as if something outside is sucking on the hull skin. I slam the talk key. Control copies, hold position, do not cycle hatches. Petrov's reply overlays mine, calm as ever. Emergency inspection team to torpedo room. Zampolit, you have the deck. I unstrap, jog past silent consoles, and feel the floor plates dipping under each step, a shallow give that telegraphs shifting mass clamped to the outer shell. It isn't water pressure. That's constant. This is movement. By the time I reach compartment 7, Orloff is backed against the racks, eyes locked on a shallow dish bulging inward between framing ribs. The steel pops with miniature pings, enamel paint flaking off like dandruff. I let the moment sit, so the image brands itself. Soviet armor flexing like a drumskin, rhythm set by the parasite, not the sea. Get your gear clear, I tell him. If that patch fails, the bow floods first. Orloff nods, teeth tapping. He drags a crate of drill heads away from the wall. The bulkhead relaxes a centimeter once the crate's weight is gone, as though the growth received relief. A shiver climbs my spine, and I'm glad no one can watch me mask it. Back in control, Karpov corners me before I cross the sill. His breath carries bitter tea. His eyes gleam with accusation. You logged scraping an hour before power dropped, he says. Now alarms fail. Explain. I logged an unknown contact, I correct. Engineering linked power loss to heat transfer, not sabotage. Unknown convenient for a saboteur. Petrov steps between us. We will solve problems, not hunt scapegoats. Kirillovich, diagnostic status. I lift the binder of fresh printouts. Sonar returns smeared with low-level static, like wet circuitry misfiring. Interference increased 8 decibels since the dive. Source matches hull coordinates of the bulge. Lebedev, still in grease-stained coveralls, sketches a diagram on the plotting board. Hull outline, fat tendrils creeping across propulsion gearing. If filaments lock the shaft, he says, we lose thrust. Only way is to cut the largest bundle here. He taps the drawing's aft quadrant. Petrov's eyes slides to the empty diver roster. Stepashin unconscious, ribs like shattered glass. That leaves one man certified for exterior work, Pavel Denisov. Crewmen call him Sully, a polar twist on Sullen. He leans against the ladder well, helmet under one arm, eyes ringed deep from nights he never forgets. 6 months ago, he surfaced the Murmansk wreck, watched a buddy implode when a clamp failed. The memory lives behind his stare like an unblinking lanternfish. Petrov speaks gently, almost fatherly. Pavel, we need you outside. Denisov doesn't answer. He looks at the helmet visor, then at the deck, then at the visor again, as if waiting for one to vanish so the decision makes itself. Karpov snaps, he will obey. No, Denisov whispers, voice ash-dry, not again. Silence thickens. The commander turns to me, the outsider wearing a loyalist face. Kirillovich, you've got away with radios and with people. 1 hour. Get him suited or I send a conscript. A conscript means panic, mistakes, death. And Karpov will frame that death as evidence of Western sabotage, my mask ripped away. I walk Denisov to the crew mess where permafrost fog curls off sealed soup tins. No other sailors, just dim red lights and the low tick of hull plates cooling beyond comfort. You know why we are really here? I ask, voice pitched low. He shrugs. Neither do they, I add, nodding toward the passage where Karpov prowls. All they know is you can keep this boat moving. Denisov rubs thumb over a gouge in the tabletop, scar tracing scar. Dmitri's helmet folded like candy, he says. His face, it's still in my dreams. Out there, I'll see that again. You'll also see 160 men live to dream something better, or you'll watch them choke on brine because the shaft locks. No middle ground. He closes his eyes. A full breath, then another. Not today, Kirillovich. He stands, leaves the helmet on the bench, and walks out. I stay seated, listening to engine room ventilation drop a note lower. Reactor output dipping. 4% gone in 20 minutes. The growth is hungry. I run the math. Ballistic missiles dead weight in the tubes, half-speed maneuvering at best. Heat bleed accelerating. Without thrust, we drift beneath the cap until oxygen scrubbers freeze and the parasite decides how we end. Time to choose. Drag Denisov bodily to the dive locker, or gamble on a novice who will die in minutes and doom the rest through his fear. Extraction, Langley, Cold War scores? I push them aside. The stakes have shrunk to human scale. Who breathes, who doesn't? I head for the captain's stateroom. The deck underneath trembles, a minor quake traveling the length of the Volk as filaments tighten their embrace. Some choices announce themselves in brass bands. This one arrives in a murmur colder than salt water. Convince Pavel, or we freeze in the dark while an uninvited creature steers us wherever its cradle waits. I reach Petrov's cabin before the hour bleeds out. He sits with Chief Engineer Lebedev, both bent over a clipboard whose fresh columns tell the worst truth yet. Reactor thermal loss, -4%, cumulative -16. Output ceiling, 64% of nominal, core delta T, falling. Lebedev's pencil trembles once, then steadies. If we hit 50, coolant gels. After that, the pump seize. Petrov lifts his eyes to me. Report, Kirillovich. Denisov refused. No spin, no apology. The deck vibrates beneath us, micro shifts as the parasite realigns its grip, and the vibration says time is almost gone. Petrov inhales, slow, like a boxer making peace with the bell. Then we use a conscript. Behind him, Karpov straightens, satisfied. Saboteurs fear sacrifice. A volunteer will restore order. Order? I bite off the word before anger slips through. You'll be sending a boy into black water he's never tasted. He'll panic the first time his tether jerks. Karpov smiles thinly. Fear separates the faithful from the weak. Petrov ignores the jab. 30 minutes to select and brief the diver. He rubs the bridge of his nose. Tiredness finally leaks through command posture. Kirillovich, return to sonar. Track any change in shaft vibration. If the drag spikes before the cut, I need 10 seconds warning to blow ballast. Understood. The word tastes like surrender, but I say it anyway. I pivot for the hatch. The corridor outside stirs with settlers, crewmen whispering questions no officer will answer. Sweat mixes with cold on their foreheads. In that brine, I can smell a dawning dread that feels larger than discipline. One untrained diver equals one guaranteed corpse. One corpse equals panic. Panic equals rifles unslung in tight corridors while an organism outside drinks strength we cannot spare. And underneath each step lies the quiet calculus Langley taught me but never tested. Save the mission, or save the men who never signed up to be larvae jackets for something born before nations. In the mess, I passed Denisov's helmet, still alone on the bench, visor reflecting emergency blue. The intercom clicks overhead. Petrov's voice carries through the hull. All hands, prepare for power step down. Life support will cycle to survival mode. Non-essential lighting off. Tube light strips fade to a pallid thread. Air cools another notch. Somewhere aft, a sailor begins to pray under his breath. Syllables I can't pass through steel. 30 minutes. Then a boy steps outside and the Volk rolls its dice. I angle towards sonar but detour into sickbay. One glance, one last chance. Through the cracked door I see Stepashin strapped to a frame, torso wrapped in gauze that seeps brown. He stirs, eyes wild, tries to speak. Only a hiss escapes, lungs crusted by whatever touched him. The hiss is enough. It sketches a map of agony Pavel will picture the moment that tether jerks. Outside sickbay, I rest my head against the bulkhead. I need Pavel, and I have no more logic left to offer him. What's left is truth. The hallway bends toward the berthing deck. I follow it, boots sliding on condensation that sheets across plating. Just before the ladder well, the hull gives a long, low groan, sheet metal bending another millimeter inward. A sailor screams from the torpedo room. Bulkhead 7 again. I don't break stride. Every sound now is a clock hand. At berthing, I spot Denisov sitting on his rack, elbows on knees, eyes fixed on nothing. I step into the cubicle, let the canvas curtain fall behind me. They chose a runner yet? Not yet. I'll suit him. His voice shakes. Lash his webbing. Make sure the tether knot holds. I sit opposite. You know what happens when that knot holds and he can't breathe through his mask. He claws at it and floods himself. Denisov swallows, Adam's apple bobbing. Better him than me. The phrase comes out cobweb thin, as if he already hates the taste. Better you than all of us. His shoulders twitch. He lifts his head. For the first time I see the exact shape of the decision forming behind his eyes, the moment when guilt outweighs terror by a hair's width. Finally, a nod, small, final. Tell the captain I need 10 minutes. Relief surges, sharp, immediate, but I keep my face still. I stand, hand on the curtain. I'll have your suit warmed. He exhales long, like ballast finally venting. Then he whispers, 6 years since Murmansk. Let this one count. I let the curtain close. In the passageway, overhead lights stutter once. Life support switching to its last setting before frost breeds on lips. My breath hangs white for a heartbeat, then fades as the air cools further. Down the corridor, Petrov's voice calls for the chosen diver to report to the lock. I head for control, words ready. Pavel is coming. I can almost feel the collective exhale that will follow. No triumph, only a slender postponement of doom. But behind me, deeper in the hull, the parasite answers with a fresh, grinding sigh, steel stretching like wire slowly wound past yield. The race is joined. One man's courage against a body that never learned the mercy of stopping. And the clock keeps time for neither. Control is half dark when I arrive. Only the periscope repeater bright enough to tint faces green. Petrov looks up from the plot table. Denisov's on his way, I say. The relief that crosses his features lasts one heartbeat. The boards behind him steal it. Reactor output has slipped to 60%. Coolant pumps strain, shafts of condensation drifting off the conduits like spent breath. That buys us minutes, not mercy, Petrov replies. Then louder for the room. Engineering, hold thermal delta. Nothing drops below threshold until the cut is finished. A murmur of yes, Captain, rolls back. Nobody pretends confidence. Lebedev meets me at the dive locker. He's docking the reserve umbilical, hands so numb the wrench clacks twice before he seats it. I've shortened the task list, he says. 1 slice, 5 centimeters deep, at the primary bundle. After that, we haul him in. No hero runs. Pavel enters, already zipped to the neck. His stare doesn't waver, but his fingers shake as he signs the equipment ledger. I keep the moment quiet. No pep talk, no last-second morality. The suit's internal heaters whistle to life. Frost blooms off the gloves where hot fabric meets cabin air. The Zampolit arrives unasked, flanked by 2 ratings with rifles slung. For security, he says. His eyes lingers on me. If sabotage continues, I'll have names. I log the threat and turn to Pavel. Helmet seals in 10. Test comms. He touches throat mic. Vogue control. Diver check. Copy? Petrov's voice answers, steady. Strong copy, we read you. The outer lock cycles. Seawater creeps through gaps louder than I remember. Pavel steps inside. The hatch dogs behind him with a clang that rings down the passage. Too much like a lid. Green ready light. Flood valves engage. The roar rises, then stops abrupt as pressure equalizes. One red bulb over the inner hatch clicks off. Diver clear, Petrov announces. I jog back to sonar. Headphones on, gain up. At once the noise floor lifts. Static, but organic, like radio tuned between languages. Under it, the slow grind of the propulsion shaft. Pavel's breathing comes through channel 3. Slow in, slower out. The first 10 seconds pass. Visual on the bundle, he says. Color, like wet charcoal. He pauses. Knife motor buzzes. A brittle crack crosses the channel. Filament severed, dragging the free end away. His voice steadies, task focus chasing fear out. 6 meters off hull releasing. I watch the shaft tone. For 3 seconds, nothing changes. Then the frequency climbs, tiny but real. Drag is falling. Good slice, I tell control. Prop readings easing. A cheer bubbles through the bridge mic, brief but pure. It settles quick, stakes remain. Pavel resumes. Moving to secondary. Hold, hold! His transmission fractures. A roar swells, not water, not machinery. Steel plates shuddering in series as tension shifts aft. Every compartment feels it. Gauges spike. Pavel, status. Silence. The speaker spits a fragment. Thing under. Then nothing but sea. I yank off the headset and sprint for the lock. Inside control, alarms snap awake. Hull stress, pressure variances, reactor delta. Petrov barks orders I half hear. At the lock, red board glows fault. The pump motors whine. Seawater won't purge. Through the thick glass, I glimpse darkness, then a flash of arc light as Pavel's helmet lamp swings. He's there, pressed against the viewing port, visor smeared with something dark. His eyes are clear. He's mouthing words I can't hear. I slap the talk button. Repeat, Vog can't copy. His lips shape the word U-boat. 2 syllables, unmistakable. Behind me, the passage groans again. Deeper, longer, like the ship itself is being unzipped along the keel. Men shout in engineering. Power levels jump 58%. I whirl back to Pavel. He taps the glass 3 times, points down, then slashes thumb across his tether. Wants it cut. Wants free of whatever pulled him under the hull. No time for debate. I grab the manual shears, slide them into the guide slot, and sever the line. Tether whips through the aperture, vanishing into black water. Inside the lock, pressure gauges settle. The fault clears. Pumps engage. In 60 agonizing seconds, the chamber drains, hatch bolts unlock, and Pavel stumbles out, helm hanging from one glove like a decapitated head. He thrusts a fist toward Lebedev, a rust-eaten steel shard, edges filigreed by growth. An iron cross rivet is half fused to it, corrosion polished by decades of current. Type 7, he rasps. It's beneath us. Silence clamps the corridor. Above, control pipes reactor status 55% and sinking. Petrov orders an emergency conference. Karpov demands confinement for the diver until security vetting concludes. Pavel leans against the bulkhead, shaking but alive. He meets my eyes, and in his expression I read the next stage of horror. If a World War II hull is chained to us, we have inherited its fate and its escort. Whatever we cut, he whispers, was steering both. I glance at the shard in Lebedev's hand, that ancient crest welded into alien tissue, and a thought colder than the Arctic sluices through me. We are not the organism's first ride. Petrov's voice booms over the ship wide. All senior staff to control. The meeting will decide whether we fight, flee, or surrender to a thing old enough to wear lost navies like shellskin. I push Pavel towards sickbay. He needs medics, not politics. Then head for the ladder. Behind me, the hull flexes once more, a reminder that our unseen companion just lost a limb and will answer in kind. The Vog tilts nose down, depth gauge ticks lower. Whatever waits in the trench has begun to reel us in. The deck rakes under my boots as I climb. Gravity favors the bow now. Control thrums with low voices that die when I step through. Petrov stands at the chart table, Karpov beside him. Lebedev setting the shard on a tray of blotter pads as if it might burn through steel. Pavel's helmet cam feeds to the forward repeater. The frozen image shows a bevel-edged hull plate, overgrown by the same black crust strangling us. Dead center, a corroded iron cross, half fused into living matter. No one speaks for 3 breaths. The stillness lets the new truth bite deep. Whatever clings to us ate a submarine before we were born. Lebedev breaks it. Samples ferritic steel. Carbon profile fits German construction codes issued 1942. Petrov's reply slips out as air rather than voice. He orders a chemical test anyway, knowing the answer. I push towards sonar. Captain, let me overlay our last 15 minutes of pings on Pavel's cam frame. If there's more metal beneath us, I can tune for density. Karpov moves to block me, suspicion sharp. Petrov waves him off. Do it. I cue the raw returns, subtract the Vog's signature, and amp the residue until noise turns white on the scope. Lines resolve. Frames, ballast tanks, torpedo tubes, smaller, older, hugging our keel like a remora. I angle the display so everyone sees. A Type 7, I say. Depth matches our own. We're riding it. The room absorbs that. The machinery drone seems softer now. The reactors have dropped again, 52%. Karpov steadies himself on the plotting rail. If this is true, why did satellites never report it? Because the growth masked its heat as it masks ours, Petrov answers, pinching the bridge of his nose. It's been feeding for 40 years. The words hang, heavy enough to bend metal. I scroll bathymetry. Our track curves toward a trench 200 kilometers northeast, slope and shape like a gash cut for a coffin. Petrov traces the arc with one blunt finger. We have not been steering for 15 hours, he says. The organism has. Destination? Lebedev asks, though he knows. The trench floor. Pressure there will crack any hull ever built. Either we free ourselves soon, or we become the next layer of armor for a creature that nests in submarines. Petrov lifts his head. Options? Propulsion is strangled, Lebedev says. We could try full reverse, but shafts may shear. I add my own cost. Reactor at 50% can't power a sprint, and if we throttle up, we warm the parasite. Feed it. Karpov seizes on the impasse. Then we maintain course and transmit findings to Moscow. Command may instruct. Petrov looks through him. The radio would betray us to every listening post within 500 miles. And if this thing can hide our heat, it might block our long-range signals too. I wait, watching the captain's calculus tighten. He is a hunter forced to admit the prey has inverted the trap. He turns to me. Can you isolate the growth's acoustic chatter from our internal circuits? Possibly, sir, but knowing what it says won't cut us loose. It might tell us when it plans to finish the meal. His smile is thin. Information buys time. Time is the new currency. I nod. Petrov folds the bathymetry chart. We have 90 clicks before we hit this slope. Prepare damage control parties. Load torpedoes 1 and 2 with scrap charges. We may blast ourselves free. Lebedev stiffens. Torpedo ejection at this depth courts implosion. The captain sees the objection forming and adds, I welcome alternate miracles. Silence answers. I return to sonar. Headphones on, I drop all ship channels and listen for the organism's voice inside the water. At first, only the reactor's low drone rides the lines. Then a new signal chimes, thin, irregular, tapping at the edge of perception like claws on a pipe. I record a 10-second loop and play it back at half speed. The taps resolve into paired beats, call and response, answering from the trench ahead. The organism is talking to something waiting below. A chill nests behind my sternum. If the growth finishes its dialogue, we supply the final reactor surge for whatever ritual waits in that abyss. I tap the ship wide. Captain, you need to hear this. Petrov arrives, leans close to the speaker. The taps play again. His jaw clenches and his decision lands like a hammer I feel through the deck. Conference over. We cut it loose or die trying. He strides for engineering. I follow, mind racing through sabotage tables Langley taught for worst-case denial. Every column ends in the same final entry. Scuttle, if capture is certain. But scuttling here feeds the monster. For the first time since I stepped aboard, national orders feel smaller than the steel around me. The corridor bucks, sharp, localized. Somewhere up near the bow, the torpedo bulkhead groans a note lower. Depth-seep water drizzles from a weld seam like sweat. The deck tilts another degree as I follow Petrov into engineering. Pipes sweat in the raw chill, and each droplet ticks when it lands, counting down one timid splash at a time. A mineral smell rides the air. Hot coolant meeting cold steel. A warning the pumps are working too hard for the power they receive. Lebedev stands over a chalked schematic of the propulsion shaft. His jaw works, grinding thoughts into shape. Two senior machinists hover, faces blanched grey under the emergency lights. Petrov's voice cuts the hush. We're passengers on a corpse, ideas? Lebedev circles 3 zones aft where filaments cluster. Cut here, here, and here. Propeller might spin free, but the hull will talk. We risk stress fractures. Risk. Petrov lets the word lie on the table. Give me numbers. 40% chance the crank snaps, Lebedev answers. 20 we breach a ballast tank. 10 we crack the reactor loop. Karpov arrives with his escorts, boots ringing off the ladder rungs. Unacceptable. Command will not forgive a self-inflicted catastrophe. Petrov doesn't flinch. Command will never learn of any catastrophe if we vanish in that trench. If we cut too late, we dive past crush depth. Cut too early, we bleed radiation into the Arctic. Either feeds the thing outside, heat or hulls, it gains. I step closer, decide silence is complicity. Captain, Pavel proved filaments shear under tension. Detonate shaped charges at the joint roots while we reverse screws. Force equals mass times acceleration. We need both the cut and the kick. Karpov's head snaps my direction, suspicion rising. Since when does an acoustic tech quote Newton and demolition yields? I keep calm. Worked salvage in Kronstadt before sonar school. Blasted barnacle reefs off dry dock pylons, principal stands. Petrov weighs the lie and nods. Lebedev, prep 2 warheads, minimal fill, date cord only. Karpov lunges to block him. Sabotage. I want him confined until Moscow rules. Petrov's patience fractures at last. He rounds on the Zampolit, voice pitched for kill radius. You'll have confinement when we see daylight again. Until then, my boat, my call. The political guards shift uneasily. Karpov glares but steps back. He knows chain of command ends in a captain's sidearm when depth pushes far enough. Petrov turns to me. You understand charge geometry. Draft the cut plan. 30 minutes. The order lands, and for 3 long beats the room hangs between relief and dread. I feel both, equal doses, fighting for the upper hand. I unroll paper, sketch the shaft, mark filament roots. My hand shakes once. I steady it against the table edge. Graphite rasps over the page, a dry whisper in a room breathing hard. Outside, the hull emits a deep-drawn sigh, as if the organism notices our quiver of defiance. I let the moment settle. If the cut fails, we die fast. If it works, we still face a trench ready to accept our fall. Pick the fight we might win. Lebedev studies my plan, adds firing sequence codes. Petrov signs off with a blunt stroke, then sets a hand on my shoulder. Make it count, he says. I nod and feel a shift inside myself. The southerner from Brooklyn no longer calculating angles for Langley, only for the men within this shell. A tremor passes fore to aft, lighter than before, yet unmistakable. The keel has crossed some hidden gradient. Water pressure stiffens, the trench lip near enough for the sea to notice. Petrov dispatches runners. Sailors sprint to magazine lockers for det cord. Respirators frosting in the half-dark. Energy drops to 50%, a number that feels like a coin flipped in slow motion. I gather the blueprints, turn for the ladder. Karpov blocks the path. His eyes hold a hint of triumph. He's found leverage. If this fails, Moscow will need scapegoats. I will start with you. When the trench swallows us, there'll be no tribunal, comrade. Only cold bones in a steel coffin the size of 2 navies. Karpov's face twitches just enough to show the barb hit. He steps aside. I reach the upper machine shop as sailors uncrate demolition gear once meant for scuttling, not surgery. 2 slim, high-explosive cans, 30 meters of pink det cord, and a rattling box of detonators that dates back to Khrushchev. The air reeks of rubber insulation and the copper tang of old blasting caps, smells that always find the lungs before the mind registers danger. Lebedev spreads my sketch beside the crate. We match chalk marks on paper to rivet rows on the real shaft tunnel, choosing 3 struts where the parasite's thickest stalks burrow inward to grip the thrust bearing. Each cut must be near perfect, shear the wrong rib, and we cripple propulsion for good. I stare at the plan until pencil lines blur into a single thought. Any error feeds the organism fresh metal and hot coolant. Then I breathe, steady, Accept risk as the new law of gravity. Charges ride here, here, and here, I confirm, tapping the points. 5-second stagger, stern to bow. When the last one pops, engineering throws both screws hard reverse. Torque rips what's left of the roots. Lebedev nods. Blast wave will hammer bulkhead 12. We clear the deck first. We issue respirators, welders' hoods, radio throat mics. Each man signs the slate with a name that may go no further than this passageway. Karpov appears at the hatch, arms folded, escort still in tow. He offers no interference. He only watches, waiting for the moment fear makes his point. I refuse him that witness and lead the team aft. The shaft alley is a cathedral of dark steel, pipes arching overhead like ribs in some cold titan. Filaments emerge through access gaps, slick and mineral black, each one vibrating with irregular clicks I feel more than hear. The smell changes here. Iodine mixed with something dank, a hint of spoiled algae dragged from seafloor crevices no surface net has ever sampled. We set the first charge on the starboard strut. My hands remember training. Rubber pad, adhesive strip, det cord looped twice to focus the cut. Pavel, pale but steady, fastens the detonator and calls out, "Charge 1 secure." Charge 2 seats without trouble. At charge 3 the deck lurches. A boom rolls up the keel, throwing sparks from an overhead conduit. For 3 seconds every man freezes, listening for water. None comes. I count those seconds, let the adrenaline ebb before moving, then signal Pavel to finish the tie-in. If the hull fails under us, the trench takes the story. If the growth senses the blast and cinches tighter, the shaft seizes and we drift powerless into the abyss. Either path ends this boat, but one path leaves a message that we tried to cut free. We snake det cord back to the firing box, meters clicking through fingers. Lebedev arms the circuit, sweat beading on skin gone grey with chill. Reactor output reads 49%, one more lost candle in a cave already dark. Petrov's voice crackles over the handheld. "Control ready on your mark. Reverse power at -2 seconds. I glance around the alley. 5 men, eyes wide above respirators, waiting on a thumb press. No speeches. Everyone here knows what bets lie on the table. I set the selector to sequence, thumb on the guard. Firing in 5, 4, 3. At 2 seconds, the ventilation winds down. For a heartbeat, the only sound is the thing outside, tapping the hull in that uneven rhythm, as if counting with us. 1. Fire! Charge 1 snaps, a sharp metallic cough that punches air from the alley. Dust billows, lights flutter. Almost instantly, charge 2 kicks heavier. I feel a ripple run down the deck, followed by a shriek of tortured metal as the strut parts and the parasite's root peels away like bark. Charge 3 detonates and the deck hammers my boots hard enough to jar teeth. "Reverse! Reverse!" Lebedev shouts into the mic. Engines answer with a rising whir, screws biting water they haven't pushed in hours. Vibration builds, then changes pitch, lifting into a healthier note. I watch the shaft tachometer climb from crawl to maneuver speed. Pavel whoops once. The sound bounces off steel, shocked and raw. I let the silence after it linger, a brief taste of reprieve, before forcing myself to check gauges. Torque spikes red, then settles. Hull's stress lights blink amber but hold. On the growth side of the bulkhead, a tearing groan echoes fore to aft, followed by a rattling rain of loosened fragments falling through seawater. The organism is hurt. Over the intercom, Petrov reports forward motion, stern first but motion all the same, and an uptick in core temperature. 1 degree gained, proof we're bleeding less heat. The bridge cheers, a quick ragged bark of sound that ends almost as soon as it rises. We still have a trench to outrun. I key my mic. "Captain, propulsion free but shaft integrity unknown. Recommend we hold 2/3 speed until stresses balance." "Copy," Petrov answers. "Engineering teams stand by for inspection runs. Kirillovich, well done." I exhale, shoulders dropping for the first time since we discovered the U-boat. The relief lasts 4 silent breaths. Then the overhead speaker crackles, carrying sonar. A new contact, broad, low frequency, approaches from the trench mouth, matching our course even as we retreat. Did the organism call in something larger? Petrov orders maximum quiet. Pumps cycle down, lights dim again. We've gained freedom of movement, but it cost noise, vibration, and thermal flare. A beacon sent into depths where no beacon should reach. The bridge announces depth decreasing. Bow climbing, stern still heavy. Sheer cliffs rise on sonar, walls flecked with metallic ghosts, wreckage welded into the growth's previous meals. We count them as they pass, silent mile markers in a graveyard carved by pressure and time. In that hush, I understand the choice tightening around us. Keep engines low and pray the thing behind loses interest, or throttle up, risk another strut snap, and maybe clear the trench rim before the caller arrives. The captain asks for counsel. Lebedev votes caution. Pavel votes speed. Karpov says nothing, already calculating blame. They look to me. For once, the spy's answer is simple. If it's hunting us, caution reads as weakness. We break surface or die beneath it. Petrov nods once, decisive. Full ahead 2/3, trim for ascent. Turbines roar. The boat shudders but holds. Depth numbers tick upward, slow, fractious, alive. Behind us, sonar registers the pursuing contact accelerating, a low drum roll that grows louder with each meter we steal back from the dark. We have cut the leash. Now we race the hand that held it. The Vog answers the throttles like a bear shaking off a trap, slow at first, then with rising conviction. Deck plates quiver as water sluices past the hull in the wrong direction. Stern forward, bow clawing for altitude. Sonar feeds the bridge a steady drumbeat of depth ticks, each one proof that metal can still defy gravity if fear leans hard enough on the throttles. The pursuing contact paces us, range holding at 800 meters. In the sonar pit, I widen the dynamic range and strip away self-noise. The return blooms across the scope, broad, uneven, edged by ridges. Whatever follows is neither sub nor torpedo. The silhouette resembles a manta built from wreckage, outer skin patched with plates recognizable only because navies stamped numbers before they vanished. The thing keeps station, matching every change in our climb. If it closes, the Vog feeds a life cycle older than treaties. If we outpace it, we still carry torn filaments that could reel us back the instant power falters. No middle ground. Petrov orders ballast blown in short, rhythmic bursts to spare the pumps. Compressed air thunders through vent lines, and each blast slams us up another meter. The maneuver buys speed but amplifies signature. Karpov grimaces yet holds his tongue. Politics matter less than the rim of a trench sliding under our keel. At 130 meters, the deck stiffens. Strain gauges mute, no longer redlining. Pavel, monitoring shaft vibration, lets out a breath he may never admit he held. Bearing steady, he reports. We can risk another 10% on the turbines. Lebedev grinds teeth but nods. Petrov takes the gift. Ahead, water temperature climbs by a single degree, odd this close to polar ice. I ask sonar to confirm and get an answer I almost expected. Micro traces of coolant swirl in the wake we shed. The organism is leaking heat behind us, shedding mass to keep chase. 2 minutes later, the contact loses 20 meters, then 40. On the repeater, its form bulges, stalls, and finally begins to sink, dragging long ribbons of broken filament that unravel like kelp. The ocean draws it down, slow and inevitable, toward the trench that birthed it. Nobody cheers. We hold the moment, letting relief seep through steel in wary increments. Petrov signals half power, conserving reactor margin for the long crawl home. I peel off headphones, flex numb fingers, and let myself believe we've slipped free, until sonar tags a fresh echo dead ahead, weaker but rising fast. I recalibrate. The shape is compact, metallic, and ascending from below our projected path. Its dimensions match the U-boat fused to our hull minutes ago. "Captain," I call across control, "we have a second contact. Solo hull, no growth. Closing vertical from grid 27, bearing constant." Pavel pales first. Lebedev follows. Petrov studies the trace, finds its climb vector, and understands before speaking. The German wreck is rising without the parasite, buoyant now that our weight no longer pins it. Metal, once dormant, has begun to surface in the exact corridor NATO satellites patrol for rogue signatures. If that hulk breaches, Western radar will log a Cold War ghost on the eve of détente talks, and Soviets will demand explanations from the only typhoon cruising that grid. Reputation, mission, crew safety, all compromised by a relic we never meant to disturb. Petrov's decision lands quiet but firm. Flood tubes 3 and 4, variable depth mines, remote detonation. We erase the evidence. Karpov starts to object, then glimpses the stakes and folds. The weapons officer arms 2 mines, sets shallow depth, and fires. Shudders ripple aft as the charges leave. We track their beacons sliding toward the wreck's path. Time slows. The U-boat Echo climbs, intersects the first beacon, then the second. Petrov keys the lanyard. 2 muffled pops roll through hull and bone. The contact fractures into stuttering shards and disappears from the scope. We wait a full 10 seconds, long enough for hope to draw its first real breath, before control erupts in muted applause. No one celebrates loudly. We still lie under ice, reactors at 51%, a journey of weeks back to Murmansk ahead. Yet the trench recedes astern, and the thing that owned us drifts elsewhere to find new vessels less lucky. Petrov dismisses the bridge to damage checks. Karpov logs the day's events in a terse hand, already composing a narrative that honors Soviet resolve while omitting horrors that defy party rhetoric. Pavel heads for sickbay, helmet tucked under one arm like a pilgrim's relic. Lebedev shuts down the det cord locker and double-locks the hatch. I remain at sonar long after duty ends, recording turbulence patterns where the organism sank. Somewhere below, it speaks in taps too distant to read, scheduling its next descent. I log them anyway, date stamp, and file under acoustic anomalies, a bureaucratic box wide enough to bury any miracle. As the Vog crawls south beneath unbroken ice, I catch my reflection in the darkened scope. Russian uniform, American eyes, a mask neither side would accept if they knew the whole. For now the cover holds, stitched by shared survival and the unspoken pact that some truth stay sealed in the deep. Outside, the ocean closes over every trace of the battle. Inside, the crew settles to murmured stories already shifting into legend. I listen, the habit older than lies, and wait for the sea to decide what secrets surface next. 2 weeks after we slipped past the edge of the pack ice, the Vog reached Severomorsk under her own power. The hull wore sores where the parasite once clung, and the outer paint had blistered into a rough scab. But Reactor 1 still ticked with intolerance and the screws turned true. On the pier, Brass expected a triumphal return. What stepped ashore was a crew that spoke little, kept close, and found reasons to avoid empty corridors where memory might hiss through the vents. Stepashin never woke. He died in the base infirmary 3 days later, lungs filling with a tar-black fluid the surgeons could not name. The official report blamed inhaled coolant. The medics burned his suit and logged the ashes as contaminated waste. Pavel Denisov attended the cremation, said nothing, and afterward volunteered for decommissioning duty on surface tugs, work near wave tops where a man can taste wind every hour of every shift. Chief Lebedev took early retirement and moved inland to Kirovsk, explaining to no one why a submarine engineer suddenly needed mountains. Commander Petrov spent a month in closed hearings. He called the parasite an unidentified thermal siphon and described our escape in precise, bloodless language. The committee cleared him, cited resourcefulness under crisis, then reassigned him to a desk at Fleet Headquarters. I watched him sign the transfer, hand steady, mouth set. When our eyes met, he offered a nod that carried respect neither of us could speak aloud. Zampolit Karpov's version of events travelled further. His dossier credited party vigilance with saving the boat from sabotage and natural hazard alike. He earned promotion to a post nowhere near submarines. Most gossip says he requested that distance. Some whisper Moscow granted it to keep him from talking about things that do not fit doctrine. My own debrief was quieter. In a windowless room beneath the pier, I handed over sonar tapes, hull samples, and a notebook of calibrations thinly disguised as routine drills. The GRU colonel who collected them frowned at the German rivet fused into alien crust, asked if I believed the story Stepashin tried to tell through broken teeth. I gave the only safe answer. The ocean keeps secrets better than men do. He sealed the evidence in a crate marked metallurgical study, no priority, then suggested I request shore leave. I did. Now, months later, I rent a narrow flat in a workers' block that smells of coal dust and boiled cabbage. The nights are long enough that Orion grazes the horizon, tilted the wrong way for a Brooklyn boy. The silence between snowdrifts is wide enough to hold every unsent message to Langley. My reports go out, coded and on schedule, yet the old certainty has thinned. I find myself thinking of Petrov's calm when the hull groaned, of the way Pavel's tremor hardened into steady purpose, of sailors who followed orders they feared would kill them because trust, however frayed, meant survival. Spies are paid to map weaknesses, but living through the Volk's descent charted another terrain entirely. The quiet strength of men who know their world is flawed and hold the line anyway. Officially, the Arctic Patrol Zone shows no anomalies. Unofficially, scattered hydrophone arrays register double taps far below commercial lanes, always in pairs, always drifting toward deeper basins. The data arrives on my desk, marked inconclusive, a stamp that tries to bury curiosity under protocol. Each time the sheets cross my hands, I hear the crack of filaments letting go, feel the boat shudder free. Remember the moment we learned we were only the latest layer in something's armor. I file the readings where auditors will skim but not question. There, the story sleeps for now. Yet on nights when wind rattles the pane just so, I drop one of those tapes into a surplus cassette deck and listen to the cold speak in code no cipher breaks. The patterns are changing, slower, almost searching, as if the trench considers our escape a puzzle worth solving next season. If that call ever sharpens into a bearing, navies on either side of the ice will sail to answer it, unaware they bring the heat the deep still hungers for. When they go, someone will have to guide the search, translate the silences, and decide which truths the surface world can shoulder. That task will need a listener who already knows what waits below and why it must stay there. I have not decided whether I'll volunteer, but I keep the headphones ready.